All right, we don't get Steven Jackson. I don't know if I've had Steven Jackson in studio like pre-COVID. Seriously. Let's bring him on. He is looking fantastic. He is accepting his gray. Steven told me before the show, I'm accepting my gray. And he looks fantastic. Look at you. You really look. Now, let's start with this. You look, the stuff around the neck today.
Yeah, I started to give you one.
It's really nice.
Thank you. I worked hard for it.
Yeah, you did. Now, you don't have to give me one. I don't think it would look quite as fitting on me.
It's not about looking quite fitting.
What's it about?
It's going to look cool regardless.
I've always struggled with that. 14 years in the NBA. He's got one of the best podcasts in the country. It's called All the Smoke with Steven and Jackson and Matt Barnes. Very authentic guys, and that's why it plays so well.
Thank you.
So I want to start with Boston and Brooklyn. So as I watched the series last night, you've been in many of these series, Steven, where they back and forth. There's certain riddles you can solve in a series. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, they do that. We're going to get rid of that. We're going to mark. But there's something Boston's doing, and I don't think Brooklyn can do anything about it.
Right.
If the officials allow Boston to play that intense defensively, well, Brooklyn is not this is not the Spurs. This is not an offensive system. Mm-hmm. It's just two dudes who can ball.
Right.
Like, I think Brooklyn's going to shoot poorly. They may win a game, but they're not going to light it up in this series. It's been I don't think you can. I think Brooklyn's cooked. I think they're in big trouble.
They're in trouble with simply the fact that they're getting punked, and that's basically what's going on. The best defensive team in the league is playing like it. They're being physical. They're knocking KD down. They're making him bring the ball up from half court and get into his offense, which is impossible for even KD at this point. It's the playoffs. You need to catch the ball inside the three-point line and work there. I've never seen KD get his shot blocked this many times by one player. Tatum is really taking the challenge and locking KD up. I don't want to hear about he's having bad games. This is 2 games in a row. Boston is playing great defense. Steve Nash is getting out-coached. It's clear to show by his lineups, and Boston is the more physical team, and that's the way they've been playing all year.
Now, when you go home, do you think they'll get the whistle? Will the Nets get a little bit of the friendly whistle?
If they get the whistle, then it shows the control that the league has over the game. That it's not about just the basketball.
And you don't want that.
I don't want that. Let the game be decided by the players. Don't give them the whistle because they're at home, and Boston's been a more physical team at home. I think it should be fair. They know what fouls are, but they're the more physical team. They're playing with a sense of urgency. Boston is real nonchalant. Brooklyn is real nonchalant. They get rebounds real nonchalant. They're giving up too many straight drives, full court in the playoffs. That shouldn't happen. Steve Nash should definitely get out coached.
Yeah, no question about that. You know, there's a big difference between being a smart guy and a great coach. There's a lot of smart guys out there, but this basketball thing is multiple layers. Eric Spoelstra, you watch Miami play, almost every player plays their best basketball ever in their career with Phil Jackson and Eric Spoelstra. Mm-hmm. That's just the reality of that's good coaching. Do you think... Remember years ago when the dynasty with KD was in with the Warriors, mm-hmm. and we started saying that's the best team ever, and the 2 other teams we talked about were maybe the Showtime Lakers and Jordan's Bulls.
Right.
And my takeaway was that if you allowed 1990 rules, the Bulls would control the Warriors. Mm-hmm. And the reason I say that is this series is that it looks like to me, I'm not saying KD's a finesse player. I don't think he is. But he is rattled by physicality.
Yes.
Is that what you see?
I agree too. I agree. I think when you allowed to be physical with KD, and just by his body structure, you could tell he don't work out. You could tell he don't lift weights. So I think the best bet is to be physical with him and try to make it difficult for him.
Were there guys in your career? You were a physical player, but were there players, maybe like a Kobe, that it didn't rattle them? They kind of welcomed it. Are there some players that like that and some that don't?
Well, that's what separates the good players from the great players. You know, you can do whatever, and that's what and let me explain this. A defensive player, guys that make the first team all defense, they're not stopping anybody. They're not stopping guys from getting their average. These guys average 30 points. What they're doing is making it difficult for that player on the night they're playing against them. And that's your best bet. You're not stopping any of these guys. You have to make it difficult, and that's what Boston's doing. They're beating them up. They're elbowing them. They're making them dribble 10 times. And that's what you do to star players. You can't stop them. I couldn't stop Kobe. I tried to start fights with him and be physical, but that didn't work because he was just that good. I tried it with a lot of guys, and some guys it worked on. But guys like Kobe and guys like Paul Pierce and those type of guys, they just go harder.
Yeah. So, third year of this, if they lose this series, they're going to have 2 first-round exits and a second-round exit.
Mm-hmm.
It ain't working.
Well, I have to say this. If it was a black coach with a team like that and didn't have 1 year, he would be out of here already. So are they going to move from Steve Nash? Because Ime Udoka's in the same position. They're both first-time head coaches, and look what he's doing with a great team. Steve Nash, you have KD and Kyrie, and you're not winning. It hasn't been done. So are they going to move on or find another coach that these guys can relate to? You can't just put it all on the players now, because a lot of times they like to put it on the coach. I think Steve Nash was in a great position. Not too many black coaches fall into a first job where they have KD and Kyrie. It never happens, right? And they don't last 2 or 3 years. Steve Nash, you got a great position. You got KD, Kyrie, and you're not playing LaMarcus Aldridge. I don't understand why, but this is the playoff where the game slows down. Maybe you need to try that.
I want to talk Chicago-Milwaukee. So I think the Suns will win their series with or without Devin Booker. Mm-hmm. I think the way they're constructed. And I think Milwaukee's great. But Middleton's a really, really big get-a-bucket guy. Drew Holiday, and I love him, but he's streaky. Mm-hmm. They're going to become incredibly Giannis-centric. Can Chicago win this thing if they don't get Middleton back?
Yeah, I think so. Because for me, Giannis is the most dominant player since Shaq, but his game is still limited. You stop him from going downhill, is really nothing else there. Yeah, he's a rebounder. He's a great defender. He can block shots. But if you stop him from going downhill, every move he's going to make is passing it to other guys. And that's how they beat him last night. They stopped him from going downhill a lot, and all those just dribbling from one end to the other end. If you stop that, his game is really limited after that. He can't spot up and shoot. So his game is really limited. And I think Chicago did a great job of limited him and making him make plays for other guys. And not having P.J. Tucker is going to hurt, because now Giannis doesn't have to be just the best offensive player. He has to be the best defensive player on that team and the offensive player. He had P.J. Tucker taking a little pressure off him last year.
Years ago, but it may have been 6-7 years ago, the three-point avalanche started. Mm-hmm. And guys who were just ballers and athletic, like DeMar DeRozan, people kind of went, I can't shoot a three. And I honestly felt like, Stephen, DeRozan was one of those guys that got caught in sort of this analytic wave. We knew he was an athlete.
Yep.
We knew he was a fearless player. Couldn't hit a three. Mm-hmm. And we were falling in love with guys who were much less talented, but they could hit a three.
Right.
And I feel like this year for DeMar DeRozan has been timeout. When the playoffs start, analytics, it's kind of about get a bucket.
That's it.
Like when I watch DeMar, I'm like, that's kind of Kawhi Leonard. Mm-hmm. Get a stop, get a bucket. And do you feel as a former NBA player, sometimes we go so heavy into analytics, we ignore mid-range players?
Yeah, because it's not exciting. It doesn't get the Instagram post. And that's what a lot of guys are playing for. But me personally, I love guys like DeMar DeRozan, because that mid-range shot that's the shot that's basically the toughest shot in the game. That's why Rip Hamilton has so much success with Detroit, because nobody wanted to guard guys coming off screens, and not too many guys can pull up and hit that mid-range shot. And it's very few guys that can do that. But when guys add that to their game, especially at the end of their career, that gives them more years. And the way DeMar DeRozan is playing now, he's going to have a long career just doing that, just being able to hit mid-range jumpers. And it's showing how important it is for the Bulls right now to have a guy that can go out and get a bucket without shooting threes. You know what I mean? Especially when the game slows down, like I say, in the playoffs.
So when Philadelphia and Brooklyn made their trade, I had said on the air, I like what Philly's doing. Philly's just asking one talented guy to join this thing.
Right.
Brooklyn's getting all these moving parts, and I don't know what I get with Ben Simmons, and I'll have to put Drummond in, and Curry is going to take some shots. And I feel like Maxey feels freed up, and Harden's like, I don't have to score 30. In a weird way, Harden is a 1, but doesn't every night when he shows up want to be a 1. And I watch Philadelphia, and I'm like, all they basically did is move the furniture out, brought one nice table in, and the house is cleaner. And I like what I see. I feel like Maxey has really benefited from it. Nobody's taken a shot. Since the trade, He averages 3.5 more points. He's shooting 6% better. Mm-hmm. You know Doc. Doc coached you.
Yes.
Some like him, some don't. Your takeaway, Doc, all the new pieces in Philadelphia.
Well, I like Doc for the simple fact that he's not going to bite his tongue. He's going to be straightforward with you, and he's going to let each player know what he expects from him. I think with James, I think the best thing he did was said in the media about James is like everybody didn't get a chance to shoot. Early in the season when James wasn't playing well and Doc came out and kind of threw him under the bus. I think that was the best thing for him because now you understand, James, that coming here, you're a part of a team. We don't need you to get 30. We got some young studs over here, and we have the best player in the game right now in Embiid, the MVP. So I think now he's starting to trust in the things that Doc and Sam Cassell is telling him, and he's starting to trust his teammates, and he understands now. I can go out here and get triple-doubles like I've been doing. I don't have to go get 30 just because I'm on a new team, and that's why they're having success. You got to play through the big fella.
You know, a fascinating guy is on my podcast network, Draymond Green.
Yeah.
And it's been really interesting as somebody who now, he's part of my little company, to watch him work. Mm-hmm. So he's fascinating. Like you and Matt Barnes, mm-hmm. he practices as hard on podcasting as playing.
Right.
And I think he was a second-round pick, and it's in him.
Yep.
He always sees himself, even though he's rich now, as an underdog.
Yep.
Nobody works harder than Draymond Green in the podcasting space. Mm-hmm. And it's funny when you watch him play. I'll sit there and I'll go online as I watch him, and I'm like, he's got 6 points, and it feels like he's the most important player on the floor. You were one of those guys, not a glue guy, but a guy like when you're on the floor, you make an impact, but it's not always scoring.
And it's not always positive. It's not always positive. Sometimes you make an impact of taking a hard foul and standing up for your teammate, and that gets the arena going. That gets everybody else going. You know, it's not always a bucket or a block shot. You know, sometimes it's just standing up for your teammate or going out there and diving for a ball. The little things, and that's what Draymond does. He does the little things, and he is the best undersized defender that I've ever seen in the NBA. And the fact that he takes passion every night, the fact that he knows he's not a great offensive player, but he still goes out there and be a star in his role every night, and the way he competes, I'll take that before I take somebody with talent any day.
By the way, it's harder to play defense as you age. Shooters can shoot until they're 50. Mm-hmm. Tom Brady can throw a spiral until he's 60.
Right.
But your legs go, and the league gets younger. Mm-hmm. So why does he maintain his defensive talent as he's aged? Because you're supposed to get – Kobe could shoot to the end.
Right.
He quit playing defense his last 4 years.
Right.
Why is Draymond still great defensively?
I think he's using his mind as his body gets older. You got guys that were great defenders towards the end of their career, but it wasn't because they were fast or stronger. It's that their basketball IQ was high. They know where the guy's going. They know what he's thinking before he's thinking. Especially coming to the league for the young guys. You go against these older guys that's been in the league 10, 12 years. A lot of your moves that you're doing, they already know what you're doing ahead of time, just off experience. Experience is the best teacher. And that's what a lot of guys go through. You have a long career. Once you get to the end of the career, you slow down. People saying you can't do this. That's when you start having to use your basketball IQ to give you more years in the league, and that's basically what Draymond doing.
As a former player for 14 years in the league, who are you rooting for in the playoffs? Who will make you happiest if they win?
For me, it's two teams. I think it would be awesome to see Memphis do something great, being underdogs. Small team. Memphis or Minnesota for me. Either one of those two teams, because nobody expected them to be here. Minnesota had a great, Memphis had a great regular season. Ja had a great year. But they're both two young teams that play hard and that are on the rise. I want to see them do well. I definitely want to see Kyrie win. You know, a lot of people had a lot to say about him. You know, we're both going through Ramadan right now, so we have a lot fasting. We have a lot of things in common. But I'm always rooting for him because I'm always rooting for guys that do things their way. Obviously, a lot of people didn't like the way he stood. But at the end of the day, when a man doing something his way, which I love to do things my way, I always stand behind him. By
the way, did the crowd ever get on you? Because you were an antagonizing guy.
Did they? Something was done to me that was never done to any NBA player ever. Playoffs in Utah. They had a life-size cardboard cutout of me in the jail suit. Because remember, I got in the strip club shootout the year before. So the guy was under the basket and with the TNT camera right there with a life-size cutout of me in a jail suit. And nobody moved it. Nobody from the arena or the NBA said, take it down. They showed it 1 million times. But that's just something we had to deal with, and I was fine with it because I went and signed it after the game. I laughed with the guy. It was funny, but that's not the place for that.
Yeah, and there are areas I'm not comfortable with at all that fans do.
Yeah, that's not the place
Utah and Boston have pretty dicey. But I will say, who did we bring on the other day? Oh, I was talking to Chandler Parsons, and he said, he goes, I kind of sometimes.
That's my guy.
He's really.
That's my guy.
He liked conversations with the crowd.
We just brought him on at Showtime.
Oh, you did?
Yes, we just brought him on.
So did you ever have conversations with the crowd that were fun? Like you got into guys on the court side and it was fun?
I wasn't, during the game, yeah, it's bad because the best thing about it is they're in the stands and I'm on the court. If they ever got close, it would get bad because some of the things, you hear some of the things Kyrie said, it didn't got worse. It was way worse with us back in the day because it wasn't no cameras. It wasn't everybody just filming. So we got away with a lot of harsh things, and so did the fans. The fans, I heard fans telling people that they want their kids to die and family to die and stuff like that. But some guys laughed it off. Some guys like, well, I wish I can go in that stands. You know what I'm saying? But we just couldn't do that. But it's shady on both sides because the players respond and say things to cut low as well.
It's funny about I had Brevin Knight on yesterday, and we were talking about Memphis and Ant in Minnesota. They're so young. Those teams average 24 years old.
Yes.
Those are kids. And that's why I don't think they'll, there's limitations on that.
Yeah.
How old were you? You went junior, college. How old were you in your first playoffs in the NBA?
21.
Oh, my God. Because the intensity it doesn't even feel like the regular season.
I won a championship at 21. 21, 22, I won a championship. So I got a chance to experience the first year in San Antonio, I was on the injury list. So I got a chance to watch David Robinson, watch the whole Spurs organization, see how they work. And my second year there, which was I was 21, 22, I was able to play on a championship team, play in the playoffs, and experience that at a young age. But let me say this. I wouldn't have had success, and I wouldn't have been prepared if I was on any other team. Pop prepared me, being around all those veterans, Steve Kerr, Danny Ferry, Steve Smith, Kevin Willis, David Robinson. I had a foundation. So I wasn't going into a young team where nobody knew nothing. I was on a team full of vets. So that was the best thing for me to be able to learn how to be a professional coming in the league from the jump and win a championship around those guys.
Yeah, people don't, because Tim Duncan never glamorized himself.
Still
right?
don't.
But you were probably the best high schooler, junior college player. You were the best player for the first 12 years you played basketball. You were the best player everywhere. And then you played with Tim Duncan. And do you remember your initial feeling after 5 or 6 practices like, what is that?
I mean, it's funny. I got a story after our first or second practice. I had a great practice, but he kept feeding me. And he wanted me on his team. He called me to come work out with him. And I remember getting home and calling my mom, like, Ma, I can't believe I'm getting accepted by Tim Duncan because we were totally different. As soon as we left practice, Tim Duncan was probably going work out or something. I was going to smoke weed, right? So we was totally different, right? We were totally different. But the fact that he embraced me, it made me feel a certain way because he knew that on that court, I'm going to do anything and everything to be the best player and the best teammate you need. You know what I mean? And I think he understood my passion for the game because I know how the game saved my life.
Well, cannabis is legal everywhere. You were 20 years ahead of the times.
I needed it. I wasn't smoking for sport. That's why I never got caught, never got pulled over, never got publicly embarrassed by it because I did it for the right reasons. I wasn't doing it for people to know that I was smoking. I was doing it to relax, to recover, and be able to play basketball.
Great seeing you, man.
Great seeing you as well.
Doesn't he look great?
Always.
He told me before the commercial, he said, I'm going to let my gray go. And I said, you're talking to Uncle Colin here.
Yeah.
I'm just a handful of gray. I think it looks great.
You look great as well.
Salt and pepper is sophisticated.
Yeah, I tell Ann Ann got a gray hair the other day.
She lost it.
Oh, no, I'm not ready yet.
She literally,
I'm not leading. This is for you guys.
She did not accept it like I did.
I am not leading into gray hair yet.
Great stuff. Our friend Steven Jackson.